This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and with me today is a guest I've had on before, and you fans have wanted him back. And we have him back, former WWE Intercontinental Champion. He was in the first 9 WrestleManias, WWE Hall of Famer, none other than El Matador, Tito Santana. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing very good, thank you, and I do appreciate all the fans in Canada. It was great. Anytime I showed up in Canada, they were always behind me.
Did you have a favorite city in Canada to wrestle in?
I would say probably Toronto was my favorite city in Canada. It was consistent, and I had so many great matches there. Like everywhere else, but Toronto was a nice town. I really enjoyed the people there.
Yeah, and they also used to do all the little towns that surrounded Toronto. Now they don't do those as much for some reason. Do you know why WWE doesn't hit as many places as they used to?
I have no idea. My understanding is they're having a hard time drawing fans to their shows. Yourself, the product is not as good as it used to be. It's a different business. The fans, during Hulkamania era and then Stone Cold and The Rock. I mean, the fans used to mob the arenas, and they're having a hard time, getting a crowd.
You were a big star during the mid 80s when it probably had its biggest boom ever with Hulk Hogan leading the way, and you would often headline the B shows. What year do you think would have been your most successful year as far as having large crowds and making good money off of the gates?
Well, Greg the Hammer Valentine and I had the longest feud in the history of the WWF, and we were the main event in a lot of the big shows. Madison Square Garden, Baltimore, Toronto, everywhere. Not only with Greg, but with Randy Macho Man, without Hulk Hogan. So uh, I, I was in a lot of the B shows back then. The WWE or WWF used to have 3 shows a night, uh, and everybody wanted to be in Hulk Hogan's shows. But then after a while, we would meet up with Hogan, and he would say, "Man, I heard you guys showed up, sold out Detroit. I heard you sold out." Pretty much we sold out every arena in the country and in Canada without Hogan being on the card.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive back in those days that they would have 3 shows a night, and usually all 3 shows would be sold out for a while there in the mid 80s.
Yeah, we'd get to the arenas, and it was like going to a theme park. The fans would be circled around the arena, uh, kind of like they would circle the people trying to get into some popular rides, and they'd be 20,000 people inside, and we'd be turning away 20,000 people. It was an era of a few years. It lasted for quite a while, where the WWF was hot. We had the cartoon, we had so many stars. I just happened to be one of them. But anybody that you would name, we were all big time pros, and we were all very knowledgeable, and the psychology of the match, and it was fun.
Did you ever have any problems resisting the temptations of the road? So many of your fellow wrestlers your age have already passed away, but it seems like your name usually isn't involved in those partying stories that we hear about from those years.
Uh, I I, uh, I never got involved with the drugs. I used to and I'm not going to mention any names, but I used to ask some of my friends, God, you got to take it easy on this, and then they would say, "Don't worry, I got it under control." Everybody had it under control. Yet a lot of people were depending on pretty strong drugs on the road, and uh, coming from a migrant family, being a migrant worker, I was working in the fields from the age of 7. And I just felt that I was working too hard to be blowing my money on drugs.
Yeah, that the amount of money that they would have been spending must have been pretty crazy.
I mean, a real good friend of mine was going through a couple $1,000s a week, and I used to say to myself, "You got to go, you got to pay for $2,000, and then you got to pay taxes on those $2,000 because we were getting paid cash." Uh, and we had to settle our taxes ourselves at the end of the year. So that's why a lot of the guys ended up broke.
I guess you kept very good records of your road expenses and everything, and filed your taxes every year.
Yes. Oh no. I that was very important to me. Uh, we you know we took care of ourselves. If I had a partner like Rick Martel or different guys that I used to travel with, I used to like to share rooms to cut down on the expenses. We still had to pay for our own meals. We ended up splitting car rentals, and the only thing that WWF would pay for was our flights. Everything else was on us, and we weren't making. Hulk Hogan was making the big bucks. Everybody else, we weren't making the kind of money to be just living like millionaires on the road.
David is watching and he wants to know if you ever wrestled Matt Bourne.
Yes, I did. I wrestled him as Matt Bourne, and I wrestled him as Doink the Clown. Talk about a talented guy that went too young. Uh, he was one of the best. He was a great heel.
Yeah, do you think they could have taken that Doink character further?
Well, I think Matt was the first Doink, and I think he was having problems, and I think he was missing shows, if I remember correctly, and then they ended up replacing him with Steve Kern, and I think there were, I don't recall everything in the past. Maybe I got hit in the head too much, but I think there were several Doinks besides Steve Kern and Matt Bourne. I think Steve Lombardi was also a Doink the
Yeah,
Clown.
and a guy named Ray Apollo played the babyface Doink in later years.
Right.
Yeah, but Matt was the one that really got it over. But that explains it. If he had those issues and left the company, that's probably why.
Yeah. Again, he was our business was like a fraternity. We respected each other, and we try to help each other on the road. And you know, uh, when you saw guys that were going through problems, you try to help them. And you know, when somebody's addicted to a drug, and I've often talked about this. A lot of the reasons that I feel a lot of the guys were addicted to drugs is because we were working like dogs. Cocaine was a drug that made you feel like you had slept 20 hours. So, you take a little bump and you feel like you had slept 20 hours. And uh, like I said, we were traveling and working 350 days a year, and it was tough.
There's a fan on here that's wondering any memories of wrestling in Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio was another fantastic place to wrestle. It wasn't one of the biggest arenas, but you would have 6, 7,000 people in there, and it sounded like you had 20,000 people. Ohio had great, great, great fans, and I started going to Ohio when I was with in Atlanta, wrestling for Atlanta before I came back to New York in '83. And Atlanta was Ohio was really hot. Tommy Rich and uh, God, I can't remember who was another heel there that had great feuds with Tommy. Uh, the places would sell out all over the place.
The Dave Kruger wants to know your memories of the El Matador vignettes where you were training to be a bullfighter. Were they shot in Mexico? And what was it like doing those bullfighting vignettes?
Uh, the vignettes to me were done very well, and I think the fans were really buying into those vignettes. I was supposed to come out with a big feud with the $1 Million Man when I came back. I was promised a big feud, and all of a sudden I came back. All of a sudden, there's no feud with the $1 Million Man, and uh, everything that I did really ended up meaning nothing. That's what I never really liked the El Matador because it was a lie the whole way, and I was promised a big push, for another run, and I never got it, and I just decided that I didn't want to be on the road, after that.
Oh, so it was you that chose to leave the company then?
Yeah, I think I was one of the few that gave Vince McMahon, uh, I was I told him I had a meeting with him, and I said it's funny because I don't know if he did it because he didn't want to fire me because I had been there the longest of anybody. When I left, I had been there the longest, including Hulk Hogan. And I told Vince, I said, Vince, I think it's time for me to go. Uh, and he says, I think you're right. and I said, okay. And we shook hands. We left. I left in good terms, but there wasn't anybody who was giving their notice to Vince. But I had a bunch of years, and hard years, and a lot of pressure after every WrestleMania. There was wrestlers getting fired, and I knew that they were not doing much to me, and I just didn't want to be around uh, doing jobs for everybody else. Everybody did jobs for everybody else. Everybody put people over. A lot of people put me over. So whenever I was asked to put somebody over, God, who put me over? There was I beat a lot of guys, and well, who am I supposed to say? No, all of a sudden I'm better than the other guys. So for me, it was just a business. But I just got to the point. I'm not going to go around being away from home and traveling like a dog and just making ends meet.
Yeah, because you weren't paid salary back then like they are today. You were paid based on the house. And I guess in those 93 years, the houses weren't always great for the house shows.
Uh, no, not there at the end. There at the end, you know, you're right. The houses weren't as good. Uh, a lot of times you'd end up working 7 days a week and maybe end up clearing $500 or $600, especially if you didn't save if you didn't split rooms and split travel, and uh, we still had the same expenses as we did when we were making the pretty good money when the houses were all sold out. So it just I looked around and I just said, to me it's not worth what I'm left with. It's not worth the stress that you have to go through, you know flying to a different city every day, getting a cab, getting a hotel room, getting your workouts in, because the workouts were very important to keep your body healthy. So it just got to the point where enough was enough for me.
Darshell wants to know if you ever wrestled Pedro Morales in your career.
I never wrestled against him. Him and I teamed up quite a few times towards the end of his career. Talk about somebody who had knowledge about the business, the psychology that he had that I learned just talking to him about the business, going up and down the roads. We would, when I traveled with him, we'd share rooms, and he was a great guy, and he he always used to tell me, I can't believe, with so many Hispanics all over the world, every big city has tons and tons of Hispanics. He said that they should be doing more. Vince should be doing more with you. He couldn't believe that Vince didn't take advantage of and give me a bigger push. I think we discussed this the last time. Uh, to, there was a time when they were considering me to take the belt, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, I recall it was between you and Bret Hart, and for whatever reason, they went with Bret.
Well, uh, I think like Pat Patterson had been telling me that we were going to go into South America and Central America and Mexico and Spain. That's when they were considering me. That's when I ended up beating The Undertaker in Barcelona, Spain. I was getting wins over everybody, and I had been in the territory, so I knew when they were priming somebody. So I had heard the buzz, and I was just going along. And then I think the value of the peso was so bad. I believe that's one of the reasons that Vince decided not to go into South America and Central America and Mexico, full speed ahead. And, you know, that's when they went to Bret Hart. But, it wasn't only Bret Hart. It was uh, the $1 million man, Ted DiBiase. I found out later that Pat Patterson went and told him, Ted, it was between you and Bret. I'm sorry, but we went with Bret. That's what he told me. And I think there was a couple of other guys that Pat told it was between you and this guy, you and Bret, and we went with Bret. So you know, a lot of bullshit in the business.
How was your relationship with Pat Patterson?
I had a good relationship with him. It was strictly business. I maybe that was one of the reasons I didn't get too close to the the guys who were running the shows like Pat Patterson or Vince, or I wouldn't hang out and party with them. And I think it's what they wanted. They wanted guys to party with them. And I just it was a business relationship. I respected him, and they respected me, and uh, that was about it.
Did you have a favorite agent to work with? I know it's not like today where they have the quote unquote producers going through the matches step by step with all the talent, but when you had to have an agent in charge of your match, was there anyone in particular you liked?
I I, I don't know if you remember everybody. So Chief J Strongbow. I think that he was a brilliant guy. He would always add the little things to finishes to make the match work. Chief J Strongbow was not an easy guy to get along with. Uh, I had my differences with him, but as far as knowledge, and setting up finishes, because that's all they used to give us. They'd come and tell us, okay, this is who's going to go over, and this is what we want you guys to do, and uh, then we start putting the pieces together for just for the ending. The rest of the match was ad libbed, but we knew how we were going to go into the finishes.
Mitch would like to know if you have any road stories you could share about Rick Martel.
Well, Rick Martel was, again, when we traveled together, he was. he was a very easy guy to get along with. We had a lot in common. He didn't party like I didn't party, but I do remember one time we were in Michigan. We wrestled in Saginaw, Michigan, and we were staying. We'd fly into a center, big city, and so we would fly into Detroit, and out of Detroit we'd drive into two or three different cities. But our home base would be a hotel by the airport, and I never forget one time right at midnight, New Year's, him and I, because we wore our white trunks and our white knee pads, and they would get really dirty, and we had to wash them every day. We'd scrape them with soap, and then we'd let them dry overnight. And we both of us were laughing, in the bathroom, washing our trunks and our knee pads, talking about how the big stars, bringing in New Year's Eve, washing our gear for the next day.
How did you like your music for Strike Force when it was Girls in Cars, I believe, at one point? They gave you a music video and everything.
That was a great music. I remember when we went to L.A. to tape the vignettes with was I think it was a red Ferrari that we were in the car.
Yeah, I still remember that music video. It was pretty good. Do you still keep in contact with Rick Martel at all?
No, I bet you it's been a couple of years since the last time that I saw Rick, or maybe even longer. We didn't have a fallout. He just stopped making appearances. I have no idea. I do know that he was such a talented guy, and that's just me. Nobody has said this to me, but knowing Rick, he was such a talented guy. I wonder to myself, why is this guy not in the Hall of Fame when so many guys that couldn't carry his bag to the arena are in the Hall of Fame? So I believe that something went wrong between him and the office. Either Pat Patterson or Vince. So I mean, I never heard anything, but it's just something that I've always thought.
How did you like your feud against him? I remember actually you wrestled him on the very first house show I saw here in Ottawa, Canada in June 1989, and it was a really good match.
Well, we had similar styles. He was such a good worker. I just wished I considered Rick a better worker than Greg Valentine, and Greg and I, had a long feud. So I was anticipating. I said, "Man, this is made perfect for us. It's a perfect script. We could carry this and keep coming up with different finishes and just keep adding heat." And all of a sudden, the feud was over. I again, this is that's another thing that one of the things that I was lied, to. I was expecting to get a longer feud, and it didn't happen. And the angle was hot. The people were buying it. He had a lot of heat when he left me in WrestleMania 5, and causing the reason for us to split up. And it was perfect.
Yeah, I don't think there ever was a blow off match, was there? It just kind
No,
of.
they just stopped it. They just went from they just dropped me is what happened.
You also had a lot of matches with Kurt Hennig. How is he to work with, and how was he outside of the ring?
Well, Kurt Hennig was a fun guy. He was, to me, one of the greatest heels in at the time. He was so good. Kurt Hennig, when I was in Minnesota in the AWA, uh, he had his first match against me in a small town outside of Minnesota, outside of Minneapolis. I can't even remember the name of the town. But on his first match, I was just amazed, what a great talent he was. Uh, he, Kurt, liked to do a little partying, himself. But he seemed, even though he partied, he seemed like he was always under control. He never overdid anything. In the ring, he was fantastic.
There's a fan on here that said he recently saw a match with you and Don Morocco that was very good. Any memories of working with him?
Well, Don Morocco was the Intercontinental Champion. I don't know how well you remember Don Morocco, but Don Morocco, when I came in '83, Jimmy Snuka was chasing him for the Intercontinental title, and the only reason that Jimmy didn't get the Intercontinental title, I believe, was because he was so messed up, and then the incident that happened with him. But Don Morocco he had like a cult behind him. He had fans that just loved him, and as a babyface, uh, you always had I always had like 70% of the fans for me, and 30%, were loyal to Don Morocco. He had a great following, but as far as knowledge and whenever I wrestled, I was the baby face that always followed the heel. I let the heel call the match, and when there was time for me to do my own thing, I put my 2 cents in. The more experience I got, the more uh, they allowed me to do. In reality, they really had no choice because uh, I was as good. My psychology was as good as anybody in the business. I'm not going to say mine was better than anybody else, but mine was as good as anybody else. And after a while, you learn to have respect for those type of guys. And there were so many of us that we'd go in there, and our job was to have a match, and to we'd go in there, and whether we were the main event or the semi-main event or in the middle of the card, every night we go in there with the intentions, and we had so many fans that we went in there to steal the show. Uh, I went in there, and I made it very difficult for the following match to follow my match.
Now, you mentioned Jimmy Snuka. I'm going to guess you were around in the company at the time where that incident with him happened. Did you pay any attention to it at the time, or because you were traveling around so much, was it just kind of like a rumor floating around and you just kept about your business?
Well, the I'll never forget the incident. It was May 10th, 1983, because that was my first TV taping when I came back to New York the second time. And when I woke up in the morning, that's when I heard of what had happened. So I had no idea. I had never been in the territory with Jimmy Snuka, so I didn't know Jimmy, and I didn't. I had no idea what their relationship was like. I just knew that something happened, and uh, wrestlers just didn't talk about it. It wasn't something that was talked in the locker room. This happened, that happened. So it was hushed, hushed. Very, very few people know what really happened, and I don't know who those people are because I don't know who was with him, or it just wasn't talked about.
Yeah, it seems like now with wrestlers, they'll bring even more attention onto an incident like that rather than in the past they would just kind of like ignore it. If it had to do with one of the boys, it would just kind of be glossed over. So I don't know if it's better or worse the way it is now, but it seems like the wrestlers were more protective of each other back then.
Yeah, I like to be honest with you. I have no idea what I know. Uh, it was a lot. The dressing room was a lot more relaxed. Uh, from what I hear, the young wrestlers are not the same type of mentality as the wrestlers. I don't know. Uh, in the first place, they don't work anywhere near as much as we did, so they're protected more. I couldn't tell you what it's like to be in the locker room and or the mentality of the wrestlers. I just keep hearing that it's just not the same.
There's a fan on here that wants to know if COVID didn't happen, is there any reason why you wouldn't show up at any Mexican wrestling events because the Mexican fans still like you? Is this something that you would consider in the future?
Well, to be honest with you, I haven't traveled anywhere since COVID, so it's been close to 2 years. Uh, and I was still strapping, the boots. I do think I'm gonna strap on the boots a few more times. I don't know that I'm gonna be flying anywhere. I'm 68 years old. I don't want to take any chances with COVID. I had it once. I really don't want to have it again. It wasn't fun. Uh, so there is, I still haven't put away my boots, and I still haven't claimed retirement. So I, you know, for the right price, I will eventually, make a trip or two, to hopefully to Spanish speaking towns. There's still a lot of wrestling fans who contact me who are Hispanic and who were big time fans of Tito Santana, and they always tell me that I was the only Hispanic in the WWE with a big name that they really looked up to, and it kind of makes me feel good. I don't know if I told you this the last time, but when I got inducted into the Hall of Fame, that Eddie Guerrero was the world champion. Uh, I hadn't been following wrestling, because when I left, I left. I wasn't going to go back. They tried to get me to go back a few times, but I just didn't. I was done with the traveling. But Eddie came and and thanked me for opening the doors for the Hispanics. Uh, and God, that made me feel good.
There's a fan on here that would like to know if you have any stories about Andre the Giant.
Oh my God, Andre the Giant was a big man, and I remember that I was with him in Hawaii one time, and uh, we wrestled in Japan, and on the way back we stopped in Hawaii, and we got into a cab, and this Japanese driver was saying, "No, no, no, flat tire," because when Andre got in the front seat, he says, "Just drive." Uh, but Andre was, I mean, everybody knows that Andre liked his liquor, and I mean, you'd see Andre pretty much. You'd think that he had way too much to drink, but by the time he got to the ring, and he'd be laying, you'd think that he'd be passed out. And as soon as they said, "Andre, you're next," he'd get up and like nothing happened. He'd go in there and have a great match. Uh, I mean, he was to me the best big worker in our business. He had great ring psychology, and he could work with little guys, and he could work with the big guys, and he could carry a match.
Vander Star would like to know about working with Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Bobby the Brain Heenan. I first met Bobby the Brain Heenan in the AWA. I believe it was in 1980 when I went from New York to the AWA to wrestle for Vern Gagne, and uh, he was a great heel. I had never even heard of Bobby the Brain Heenan, and then when you watch him do interviews and the way you know he managed at ringside, he didn't take away from the match, but whenever he had an opportunity, like when you would stump it, he'd put his nonchalant, put his hand, not paying attention to what's going on in the ring, and the baby face would stomp on his hand. He was a master of that. For to get the baby face over, and he never tried to steal. He didn't want the heat on him. He wanted the heat on the heel that he was managing, and a lot of times now, nowadays the heels, they think that they're the ones that need the heat, and it's not the way it works. It's the worker in the ring that needs the heat.
Roger F would like to know your opinion of Mil Mascaras.
Uh, Mill, I met Mill. I started wrestling in 1977, and in San Antonio, Texas, for Tully Blanchard, his father. Uh, and then Tully and I went to Tampa, and that's where I started training and breaking in the ring with Hiro Matsuda. But we wrestled in Houston. No, we wrestled in San Antonio, and then we drove to Houston. And I was driving, and Mill was traveling with me, and he always protected himself, and uh, the like he wouldn't even take his mask in the locker room, and I was a real mark. I hadn't even been I refereed. I haven't even been smartened up, and I see him taking a shower with a mask on, and I said, "Man, this guy, he's unbelievable." And then we get in the car, and the guys would get in on the road, and the first thing we do, we'd stop in a gas station where they would sell beer, and we'd pick up beer, and uh, he would go in there with his mask on, and he wouldn't take his mask. He didn't take his mask on until we left the town, and then he took his mask off. And I said, "Man, this is not a bad looking guy. I wonder why he's wearing a mask." Because I always heard it always the guys that wore a mask were not, didn't look that good. But little did I didn't know that much about masks or not masks. But he had a lot of heat with the boys because Mill wouldn't do jobs for anybody, you know, and a lot of the American guys didn't consider him to be one of the best workers in the world because he wouldn't sell. I mean, Mil Mascaras was not as big as I was, but he worked like he was 6'8". He wouldn't go down for people, and he'd sell very little. And a lot of the heels had a hard time, getting heat with on him, and it was tough. But I respect him, because Mil Mascaras was demanding big bucks to make the shows, and the promoters, he drew money and they paid him.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. There's another fan on here, Rick Brooks, that wants to know if you ever wrestled Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer when you were in Georgia, and what are your thoughts on him?
Well, that's the one that I couldn't remember. Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer, him and Tommy Rich used to have some fantastic matches, and they had. I only went in there for a little while when I left the AWA. I stayed there like 2 months. Uh, Oli promised me a big push that never happened, and thank God that's when I came back to New York. But you know, again, Buzz Sawyer was there, and his brother, and uh, he was, I mean, a great talker, a great heel. I mean, he took take all kinds of crazy bumps, and again, another guy that just went way too early. I never partied with him, and but I do know that I know he used to be, he used to like to party hard, and he went pretty young.
How did you get along with the Ultimate Warrior backstage?
What was that?
How did you get along with the Ultimate Warrior backstage?
Well, it was funny because when the Ultimate Warrior first came to New York, he was pretty green. He came in as the Dingo Warrior, I think, was what they were calling him before he got all the paint and stuff. And I mean, he was wide open for any advice, on teaching him how to work. He never learned how to work, uh, but he had a completely different attitude, and all of a sudden, uh, he got the big time push, and all of a sudden, the Ultimate Warrior came up, and he started getting pushed big time. And talk about a guy who I don't think he had a lot of respect for the business because it came too easy for him. All of a sudden, he's making a lot of money, and uh, he he was a powerful guy. Weighed 280 pounds. Probably with a 33-inch waist, and very very strong guy. That in our business, we used to have a motto. You take care of my body, I'll take care of yours. Because if we didn't wrestle back then, we didn't get paid. And I can't tell you how many wrestlers just to complain about the Ultimate Warrior just not caring about anybody's body, and just potatoing the heck out of the guys. And the guys knew that Vince was really pushing him hard, so they didn't want to say anything against him. Luckily, I was a babyface and I didn't have to work against him.
Yeah, I remember you teamed with him at least once. So that Survivor Series, back when they had the final match of Survival at Survivor Series 1990, I think it was.
Yes, that was. I mean, the the two hottest guys to me at the time in professional wrestling, and all of professional, was Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. I think by that time the Ultimate Warrior had overtaken Hulk. He was selling more merchandise than Hulk was, and he was over like $1 million. And for me to end up uh, in a six man with those two guys, I mean, God, that to me that was the ultimate. That was something very very special in my career to be teamed up with them.
Yeah, and a lot of people say that is the greatest Survivor Series of all time, still. And you were also the first entrant ever in the Royal Rumble with Bret Hart, and you've been in about, I think, six Royal Rumbles. Any memories of that and thoughts on being the first ever entrant?
Well, there again, being in there with Bret Hart, me and Bret were really good workers, and again, there was psychology where you had to go in there, and it was going to be. I don't know how often the guys would get. I think every minute a new guy would come in. So we had to start the match, and it's almost like you had to go in there and have a like a comeback, uh, you know, but without the heel having the time to get the heat, to build the heat before Babyface made a comeback. We had to start with a comeback to get the people off their feet until other people started coming. Then they would bring one more person in. But I would say for about the first 6 or 7 minutes, until you had about 8 or 10 people in there, uh, it was a full full blown fight, and Brett and I were uh, we knew what we were doing. We had Lesting win. We could go in the ring, and I think that we had a job to do, and I think we did a very good job on the first Royal Rumble.
Well, obviously, if it's still around in 2022, you guys set the tone for it. Did you ever wrestle Ric Flair in your career?
Yes, I had many matches with Ric Flair. Uh, Talk about a heel, a great heel. It's hard for anybody to say he was the greatest. I was the greatest. Uh, but I'm not going to say that Ric Flair was the greatest, but I'm going to say that I'm going to put him on the top three heels in the history of the business. And, in my era, uh, I mean, what a great worker. And you go to arenas or you go to events now where Ric Flair is at. I mean, the guy still has a following. He lived the life, and he did it in the ring. And he was one of the best. And he gave his body, every night. And I just remember watching him against Harley Race and Steamboat, and when I was in Charlotte, and I just couldn't believe how these guys could go 1 hour matches night after night after night, and with Wahoo McDaniels, and how they used to beat each other up, and it was amazing to me. But uh, I don't know how many times he was the world champion, but I think he had it more than anybody else.
Oh yeah, he was up there for sure. With all the heels that you wrestled over the years, who was the heel that had the most heat overall?
The heel that had the most heat. God. I would say Roddy Piper had to be up there. Uh, and I don't know if you remember Mad Dog Vachon from the AWA. He was a Canadian. And Mad Dog Vachon used to say to me, uh, the the ring work is 10%, the interviews is 90%. And I know that you are a student of our business, and it was the interviews that sold the tickets, not what you did in the ring. It was the interviews that sold the tickets, and that you kept. It was like a soap opera that kept telling the soap opera week after week after week. And I don't know if you agree with me, but I don't know that anybody did it better than Piper.
Yeah, and as a baby face in the ring, it makes it easier for you, I guess, when a heel like Piper has all that heat. I guess you don't have to do quite as much in the match because you already have the crowd.
No, I was working in Ohio. I forgot what. No, it wasn't in Ohio. It was in Syracuse, New York. We were in the ring, and I was the Intercontinental Champion, and the place was completely sold out. We were the main event, and Piper poked me uh, in the eye, and I mean, really poked my eye, and I thought I was going to lose my eye. And I don't know if you've ever been poked in the eye, but the eye is the most painful part of the body. And I told Piper, I said, Roddy, I said, you got my eye. I said, I can't see. I don't know what's wrong. And he just put me in a hold, and he just said, Tito, just sit here, don't do anything. Let me know when you're ready to get back to do anything. And we must have sat there with him. I think he had his hands underneath my chin and his knee in my back, and I wasn't even selling. I wasn't moving. And after about 5 minutes, I started getting my vision back, and I said, and the pain went away, and I said, okay, Hot Rod, I said, I'm back, and then we finished the match. But the guy was totally under control in the ring. I mean, he was a master.
Ivan Santos says you wrestled on the first ever WWE card in Puerto Rico. Any memories of that? I heard personally that there was a lot of heat at that time with the Puerto Rican company that didn't want WWE coming over there.
Uh, there was a lot of heat. I remember getting there, and it was the biggest rainstorm uh, that I had never wrestled in the rain, and I was going to wrestle I did wrestle Randy Savage, and the mat was plastic. So I told Randy, I said, Randy, we're not going to do anything. I'm not going to take any chances. So we just grabbed a hole, and most of the match, was in the ring. We weren't going to take any chances because you weren't going to have. I think we had maybe 25 people in the stands. Uh, uh, I met some of the uh, Puerto Rican wrestlers because they were friends in the arena, and I told them, guys, we're just employees. The only reason we're not here, the only reason we're here is because Vince told us, booked us here, and we have no choice. We either show up and keep our jobs or stay home and get fired. And they understood, but we never went back because whoever ran that show lost a lot of money because they didn't expect the kind of rain that they got, and they didn't drew any money, but they still had to pay the WWF whatever fee they had for the card.
Gareth wants to know how you got along with Dynamite Kid.
I got along with Dynamite Kid. Thank God, they never pulled any ribs on me. Him and Davey Boy, they I don't know who liked to rib more. They pulled some pretty good ribs on some of the guys, but I think I respected everybody in the ring. I respected everybody in the business, and I think I earned everybody's respect. So thank God they never messed with me.
There's a fan on here that says one of the best matches he ever saw live was you against Randy Savage in Detroit in the 1980s. Any memories of your feud with Randy?
Well, Randy turned out to be one of the best heels. When Randy came into the territory, Randy came in not being a big league wrestler, did not have the gimmick, and before he got Elizabeth to manage him, Randy, we'd go out in the ring and wrestle. I remember wrestling him, and it was in Detroit, but I think it was before Elizabeth. And I let Randy call the match, and I threw like 8 drop kicks. Randy came from the South, where a lot of high spots were used in that territory. It was a wrestling territory. And after the match, I told Randy, I said, Randy, I let you call the match, and if you notice, we didn't get any response. I said, I threw more drop kicks tonight than I've thrown in a year here. I said, the fans in the WWF, they like a little bit of wrestling, and they like a fight. They want to see that you are angry at each other in the ring, and they want to see a fight. And let me tell you, it didn't take him long before Randy became one of the best. I mean, he picked it up. But, in my opinion, Elizabeth, to me, was responsible for Randy getting over as much. The part that she played as his manager, and the role, how he did it, how he handled it, and then what he did in the ring, how his work improved drastically, quickly in the ring. He became one of the best that ever went through the WWF.
Oh, without a doubt. There's another fan on here that wants to know if you have any memories of George the Animal Steel.
George the Animal Steel was a great, great wrestler. He was a football coach somewhere in Detroit. So he was a teacher. And when I met George, when I came into New York, George was leaving to go back. He would only wrestle in the summers, and he was going back to coaching, to teaching. And he told Vince that he wanted to work with me, and I worked with him all around the territory, day in and day out. And I was not used to uh, anybody like George. Uh, and he would say, just Tito, just let me do my stuff and just follow me. So I would just let him do his stuff and follow him. Talk about somebody who knew the gimmick that he had, who got the most out of the gimmick and those turnbuckles, and eventually ended up being one of the hottest baby faces in the WWF. Uh, but outside of the ring, I mean, he was the nicest guy in the world, and uh, he became an agent, and he was with the company for many, many years, and it was sad. He had gotten sick before he left the WWF, and he had shown me some pictures of what he was going through, and uh, you know, it was hard to see him leave the way he did. I miss a lot of these guys.
A long story short wants to know if you have a favorite Mexican soccer club.
Uh, a Mexican soccer club. I am not a soccer fan because I came from Texas. I don't know the game. We didn't have it in school, but whenever they have those big tournaments on television, I forgot what they call the big tournament that they have where all the countries go against each other. Uh,
The World
uh,
Cup, possibly.
yeah, Mexico is I always pull for Mexico.
And last fan question I'll ask for today. This fan saw you wrestle the Warlord at the Nassau Coliseum back in the 90s. Any memories of wrestling in Long Island?
Nassau Coliseum, to me, those fans were the wildest fans anywhere. I mean, those fans, if they loved you, they were behind you, and they loved Tito Santana. Uh, Again, I wrestled against the Warlord. He was a big guy. He came into the territory. Uh, they put him with me, and uh, he did not know how to be a heel. So in the ring, I would call the spots for him because he was afraid to talk in the ring. He was afraid the fans would see him because it's an art to be able to call a match without the fans seeing you. And then I would have him call the spot back to me, and then we would do the spot. And then I would do the next spot, call the next spot, and then he would call. Then I have him call it back to me, and the Warlord turned out to be a pretty good worker at the end. The same thing happened with the his partner. God, what was his partner's name?
Barbarian?
Barbarian. It took some learning for them to Barbarian and he laughs a lot because one of the first times that I wrestled the Barbarian, he grabbed a hold, I reversed the hold, the arm, and I was twisting his arm, and I said, Barb, grab the rope, to grab the rope so I could release the hold, so the referee would make me release the hold, and the Barbarian says to me, "Oh no, Tito, that's chicken." So I said, "Okay." So we went, when the match was over, we went in the dressing room, and I said, "Barb, that's the whole point. You look like you could kill me, and for you to be a heel and to have to use the rope for the referee to break the hold, that would make you a coward. That's what you want, as a heel." And every time I see him now, he always laughs about that. But again, he was another one that turned out to both of those guys turned out to be great heels.
Oh, without a doubt. Now, is there anywhere that fans could buy merchandise of yours or order your book or order autographs if they want to look you up online?
They could go on Facebook, and I still have a few T-shirts, and I have books. And if they want to order, send for 8x10s, for me to sign autographs. I do it through mail, and I think on Facebook I'm on my real name, Reset Solis. So if they can send me a message on Facebook, I'll start contact with them, and send them a book or T-shirts or 8x10s.
Great. And do you have any other social media other than Facebook where they could
No,
follow you?
that's the only. I tried Twitter and I got hacked, and somebody started putting some really bad stuff in there, and I just dropped it and never went back.
Yeah, the social media could be a cruel world out there, but thanks a lot for your time today. It's always an honor and a pleasure talking to you. I'll let you close this off with whatever message you want to tell the fans.
Well, Hannibal, I think that you have one of the best podcast shows that I've been part of, that I've listened to throughout. You have a great fan base, and like always, I just want to let the fans know that I am so grateful because the fans continue to support me. I do cameos, and I can't tell you how many cameo shout outs I get requested from Canada. And it always, it's, I probably get more excited when I do a shout out for a fan in Canada than I do from anywhere else. And I'm getting them from all over the world. But for some reason, Canada is so dear to me. I always love the fans because the fans in Canada, they were hard. They just didn't start cheering for you just because you stepped into the ring. You had to earn their respect. But once you got them, they were behind you, and they continue to support me, and I'm so grateful. And if I'm ever around anywhere, please come by and visit me and say hi. I love talking to the fans, and take care of yourselves. Don't get the virus. Stay healthy. Arriba!
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos,